All right. I have not made a video in some time. Life's just been a little hectic. And I kind of have a few things I've been thinking about making, and I want to get the grease the wheels and to get myself making videos again. And something simple came up. I was tagged in on Twitter about some questions for atheists, which is almost a meme at this point. It's from Dr. Michael Brown. He's a evangelical apologist. He's famous, I think, for a lot of anti-LGBTQ tweets made that's gone viral. But he supposedly, these questions, he says he really just wants to know more about atheists. Um, some folks didn't like the questions. I actually, I'm willing to kind of meet him at his word, and I wanna answer his questions. It shouldn't be too long to go through here. So his first question is your atheism based on study or experience? He wants to know, is it based on an intellectual study or based on, like, did you have like a bad experience? You could see the questions here if you want to pause and read his question. I'll just give my answer. It's a good bit of both, right? I don't think the nature of the question works without having some sort of experience, but for me, it wasn't like a traumatic thing. It was more that I eventually came to find some teachings of the church that I thought were incontrovertible teachings of the Bible, specifically that homosexual relations and relationships were morally wrong, right? I think it's very hard to read the Bible in a way such that it doesn't teach this. Um, and when I had some friends who were gay and I saw that they loved each other in the same way my wife and I loved each other, that sparked some real questions in me about my religion. And I eventually asked myself, why do I believe in God in the first place? Why do I believe in Christianity in the first place? What reason is there? And I threw myself into apologetics because I started questioning my faith. And then that just kind of made it fall apart ever more, like, faster, because I would find arguments like the Kalam, and then I would be like, this doesn't work. And then I eventually realized I didn't really have a good reason to believe in God, and I started to think and take problems of evil more seriously. I had some lingering doubts over the years as different online experiences, being an evangelical Christian myself, made me, people threw like the problem of evil at me and stuff like that, and kind of lingered, and then eventually became very personal, which caused the experience, which caused the intellectual investigation. Uh, so, and then I ended up making a YouTube channel trying to help other doubting Christians or budding atheists uh, to have better answers to Christian apologetics. So I'd like to think it was pretty study based, but I think experience is a necessary catalyst. Second question is, do I have a purpose and destiny? Um, so, like, I guess purpose and destiny. He says a feeling that you were put here for a reason and that you have a mission to accomplish. Or is this something that only people of faith have? So I have a purpose in that I gave myself a purpose. I don't believe in destiny, right? I wasn't put here to do anything. I give myself a purpose, much like God has to give himself a purpose, right? I think it's kind of silly to say that to have a purpose, you must be given a purpose. God certainly wasn't created based on your theology, so God either can't have a purpose or you can give yourself purpose. And I think I give myself purpose. My purpose really is to have a family. That's primarily the most important thing in my life. My kids, raising my two daughters, being in a loving relationship with my wife. I want to. My goal is to make put my girls through college, hopefully without them having to take student loans. Help them get a good start in life. You know, that's my goal. Uh, Long term, at least. Besides staying married to my wife and making sure that we're happy with each other. So that's it. He next asks, "Does God exist?" Well, uh, and he does say, "Are you 100% sure there is no being such as God?" Um, he defines it as the triomni being, or did I say, for all practical purposes, have I concluded God does not exist? Um, so I think the 100% certainty thing is quite a bit of a bit. It's a canard. It's a bit silly. Most epistemologists would tell you 100% certainty is, uh, uh, you know, not really achievable. And you could ask, oh, well, you're 100% certain of that, right? But that's based on, you kind of just assume logical axioms and certain foundational metaphysical principles that, get you to that state. So I think I know there is no God. I'm pretty confident in that fact, just because I know what loving is, and what a loving parent would do, and I know what omnipotence and omniscience entail in terms of being able to do all things logically possible. And it's logically possible God could have just created everybody in heaven. If a loving God existed, I think we would all just be in heaven. There would be no such thing as evil, sin, suffering, or whatever. So I'm pretty well convinced that the world as we have it is not the product of a being that loves us. I think that's inconsistent. Um, so, no, yeah, I don't believe God exists, but the 100% certainty thing's a bit of a canard. Next, can science explain the origin of life? Do I believe science can provide answers for the remaining mysteries of our universe? Maybe. Some questions are probably beyond us, like this sort of, uh, so specifically for the origin of life, like I think abiogenesis, there's certain things where you can take inert chemicals, put them together, and have an electric, put an electric charge in there, and then like some basic amino acids or something like that could be formed. There are different experiments that did this. So I think, like, it's in principle possible, right? That you could have this happen in under some condition, whether or not it happened here on Earth or in space, and then something fell to Earth that had life and it evolved. I don't know. Origin of the universe, there's models of an eternal universe, right? Like we don't have the perfect picture of physics. We don't have a grand unified theory, but there are candidates, and then there are models that are perfectly compatible with all empirical evidence that you could have an eternal universe. You could just have the four-dimensional space-time block that just always exists tenselessly. Like, I don't think you could ever really prove it, right? I think these like border on metaphysical question, like the sort of metaphysical thing. Um, so I'm fine. I don't expect that science has to provide answers for everything. We're not guaranteed any answers. Um, the universe is under no obligation to make sense to us. We'll try because it's interesting, but I don't. It could possibly explain it, but I don't know if we'll ever get there. I guess is my answer. Have I questioned my atheism? Yes. Um, so I have had religious experience when I was a believer. I think there was like a church service. We had some people come. They were just graduating like high school. Some of them were going into the ministry, and they were like doing a tour of churches. And some of our uh, teens were involved in that group, and they gave like a really wonderful, moving uh, singing performance during worship, and I just felt like so moved that I thought to myself at the time. I remember very distinctly thinking, I was like, "Wow, God was really present here." Right now, I think that was just emotionally overcome by you know the performance that was going on. I've had a couple other things where I unfortunately have had to watch many relatives die, and I had my grandfather. He was not. We were evangelical. He was nominally Catholic, and I remember trying to witness with him and pray with him to try and save him when he was not very cognizant, but in a hospital bed. And he said, along with us, the sinner's prayer, and I thought I felt overwhelmed, and I thought, at least he prayed the prayer, and so I thought he was saved, and then that made me feel sort of a presence, and I think obviously you explain that with being emotionally overcome. I also, when I was losing my faith, threw myself into apologetics. Like, I tried to defeat my own atheism. It just never worked. So yes, I have questioned it. Um, I have not really found any particular apologetic arguments to be remotely convincing, though. So subjective religious experience would do far better in terms of evidence, I think, than any apologetic argument, just because of the nature of metaphysical arguments in general. Next, are you materialistic? Are you completely materialistic in mindset? He specifically says human beings are entirely physical. Human consciousness is an illusion, and there is no spiritual realm of any kind. Or are you superstitious reading horoscopes and New Age practices? Um, I don't. I'm so pessimistic about metaphysical outlooks that I don't think I could defend materialism. I think it's unfalsifiable as a theistic one or an idealistic view. I am sympathetic to it, though. I think it could very well be true. I will gladly defend it from apologists who want to provide potential defeaters to it as if it is impossible to be true, right? So I think things that try to aim to defeat materialism, such as like qualia, Mary's room, and those sorts of things, um, those thought experiments don't work. I think it is possible that we are purely material beings. It seems sort of likely to me, but I couldn't prove it, so I don't really want to claim that it is. I think consciousness as an illusion is like silly. Um, you know, I think the materialistic view, if you're going to take materialism of the mind seriously, then you think that like qualia just is certain signals being passed through certain parts of the brain. Um, but like any philosophy of mind, so like dualism has the interaction problem, materialism has the problem of just of trying to explain qualia in purely material terms. And then I think panpsychism has an occasion problem. I'm not too well read up on it, but it has a similar problem. Any given view on the philosophy of mind is going to hit an issue that's very hard to square up with everything else we know about reality. So I don't know, really. I'm agnostic. I don't think there is a spiritual realm. There could be. I guess I'm agnostic on that, but I can't really prove that there isn't one. Uh, I'm not really. I don't really think there is one though. Um, and next, would you be willing to follow God? And this is where I think he's got a little bit loaded of a question. If you were convinced that God truly existed, meaning the God of the Bible, who is perfect in every way, full of justice and mercy, our Creator and our Redeemer, would that be good or bad news? Would you be willing to follow him and honor him if he were truly God? Um, so if I was to die and I or was presented with repeatable, empirically verifiable miracles. That's my big criteria of like how to convince me that not only does God exist, but your religion is true. That I would, repent and ask forgiveness, and I would follow God. Right? It's sort of to quote The Rock, who sort of could paraphrase Job with this: know your role and shut your mouth. Uh, if that being does exist, then okay, that is he's by nature ontologically defines the good. I have to radically reorient my understanding of what goodness is. And yeah, you follow that. I think you're crazy not to. Would it be good or bad news? Um, I think if the only version of Christianity I really could be convinced is true, I think by argument without dramatic, miraculous evidence, is the sort of either annihilationism or universalism, like David Bentley Hart's view. I don't think hell is compatible with a loving God, um, especially given the weird epistemic position that all humans are put in about God's existence and which religion is true. Um, but so like if hell existed, I think that's kind of bad news, right? Like if I was suddenly convinced like oh hell exists, like that's kind of bad. I'd still follow the God, or I would be like I'm sorry, I'm convinced now. I will follow you, submit myself to your will. Um, but I would my intuitions about what is moral and what happened in the Bible. Um, at that point you just have to accept. Well, my understanding is so limited, right? But I don't see good reason to doubt those strong intuitions about like genocide and slavery, being immoral or eternal conscious torture being immoral. Like even if I thought it was wrong, but I was convinced God exists, well, okay, obviously this is fine, right? Like I'm wrong, he's right, he's God. So I would follow, yes. Good news. I mean, if it was universalism, I guess, or even annihilationism were true, I guess that's pretty good news. Um, sort of. Maybe. I'm not sure if that's good news. Universalism, I guess, is got to be good news, really. I have some qualms about, it living forever. I think that could have some conceptual problems, but, um, I mean, God just changes you so you don't. have a problem with it, so it's not completely terrible. I guess it's I guess it's got to be good. You're in eternal paradise, so it kind of depends on which version of the God existed. But like, if I was convinced God existed, yes, I would follow it. So, but I'm pretty well convinced God doesn't exist, especially not the Christian God as depicted in the Bible. So, that's it for the questions. That's my honest answers. Try not to be snarky. Hope you like it, Dr. Brown. Take care.